Hello grade 9s and welcome to Contingency Tables. So in today's lesson we're going to take it nice and steadily, nice and relaxed. And what I was interested in when I was looking at the Ed puzzles, I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to see, as of 8 o'clock on Tuesday evening, and I think one's busy coming in at the moment, so the stats are as of 8 o'clock. Let's see, in terms of house, there's a nice picture of your house. Let's go double story. And so let's compare to your house, how many people are Ed puzzlers? Now Ed puzzlers, I'm going to say, now the Ed puzzle logo, I think looks something like, I don't know, something like that. So I'm gonna term somebody an Ed puzzler if they've done 75% at least of the Ed puzzles. And let's look at this data to say, how would we show how many people in a certain house are Ed puzzlers, how many Ed puzzlers are from a certain house, etc. So I prepared a table. Table here that's missing some numbers. Okay, let's pause down. So I'm sure you're saying, well done. Well done, Mr. Rod. You've done it again. Another great planned lesson here. Okay, so not all's lost though. We've got some information that seems to be here. So let's work through what's happening here. We've got Crew, Espen, Noling, Merriman, and we know that there are 13 DSG pupils in the grade 9 class, in our maths class. So let's see. Now have a look at that table and just let me know, do you think you have an idea? Right now, can you just fill in the rest of the table and give it a go? And from now I'm just going to put in 1 or 2 pauses along the way. Then I'm going to work through maybe filling in some of the table. But right now, how are you feeling? Have a look at that table. I think you can do it. I really back. Fill in the rest of the table. Okay, so you've had a look at that. And I want to work through how I'd fill it in. So Espen's the most important, right? Yep. So I'm going to say, well, there are 5 Ed puzzlers in Espen and there's 6 Espenites in the class. So therefore we've got 1 Espenite who's not an Ed puzzler. Because 5, so if I asked you stick up your hands, 5 would you say yes, 1 probably wouldn't stick up your hand, right? No. Okay. So let's go through. Noling. What about Noling? Oh, even got a purple. If there's 1 person in Noling and none of the Noling pupils are non-Ed puzzlers, then that 1 person must be an Ed puzzler, right? And so we can go along and start filling in and going, well, Merriman, we don't know just looking at it. Is Merriman going to be 0, 4, 1, 3, 2, 2, 3, 1, 4, 0, we don't know. So we're going to skip Merriman and say, what about in total? If there are 13 in the class and 9 are Ed puzzlers. Okay, so we've got 4 non-Ed puzzlers. And pause as we go, or just keep watching, reaffirming how you did. Okay, now let's see what can we fill in. Now, at certain stages, you could fill in different parts in a different order and it doesn't really matter. So let's go to total over here. Let's go to the crews and say, well, if there are 13 pupils in the class and we've got 6 Espen, 1 Noling, 4 Merriman, so 6 plus 1, well, I'd actually go 6 plus 4 first because that's easier. 10, 11, which means there must be 2 pupils from crew in the class. And if they're 2 altogether and 1's a non-Ed puzzler, 1 must be an Ed puzzler. Okay, now we can go to Merriman. Yeah, we probably should fill it in, hey? So again, we can't just look at, oh, there are 4 in total in Merriman, but let's go across to go, well, if the non-ed puzzlers have got 1, 1 and they're 4 together, there must be 2 over here, and let's either way now. So now we can check if we're on track. So if they're 4 together and 2 non-ed puzzlers, there should be 2. Now let's check if that works going the other way. Does it work going the other way? In other words, can we add up our ed puzzlers, and 1 plus 5 plus 1, does adding another 2 give us 9? Well, indeed it does. 1 plus 5 is 6, plus 1 is 7, plus 2 is 9. If it doesn't add up, go back and fix your contingency table. Even in a test, it's worthwhile doing. Okay, so there we go. There we've got our contingency table. Thank goodness. Okay, so after all, we didn't need all the information. So let's run through a few probabilities. So we're going to ask ourselves a few questions here. What's the probability? Oh, there, it just sneaks in. Okay, so we're going to pick pupils, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to say, like, I'm picking, I've walked into the room. So there's some subtleties here. To say, if we've got a pupil picked at random, that's what part A asks. Then it's like, you imagine I walked into the class and I said, I'm going to pick, and you've all moved around the class and shuffled yourselves up, and I say, I'm just going to pick somebody. So you've all moved around you. What's the probability that out of that I've picked an Espen pupil? Okay, so how do we figure that out? Let's look at our Espen pupils and say, well, we're picking from all 13. So we're picking out of 13. So for this one, for question 1, we're going to say, well, there are 13 pupils that we're picking out of, because I've just said everyone's in the room. Out of 13, how many of those pupils are Espen pupils? Well, there's 6, so therefore it's going to be 6 out of 13. Okay, we're never going to have to simplify any of our answers because 13 is a prime number. Makes our life easier. Okay, now second one. What's the probability? Everyone shuffled around and you've moved around, and I'm saying, okay, I'm picking at random, and I'm not cheating, and I'm going to say, there we go, second from the back. What's the probability that I've picked an ed puzzler? Okay, so let's run through it. We're picking a pupil at random, so out of all 13 pupils in the class, out of 13, how many pupils are ed puzzlers? Well, ed puzzlers, the total number of ed puzzlers is 9. So the probability that we picked out an ed puzzler is 9 out of 13. Okay, so we're running through here. A knowling, then we can go purpley, I should have gone blue there. So what's the probability from picking a pupil at random, so any pupil, everyone shuffled around again, what's the probability of picking a knowling pupil who is not an ed puzzler? Okay, so again, in question 3, we're still picking from all 13 the probability of a knowling pupil. So of the knowling pupils, who is not an ed puzzler? Well, nobody in the class is in knowling and not an ed puzzler. So the chances are 0. So this one, we should simplify to 0. Okay, then let's keep going with Merriman, or with question 4. So Merriman, are you yellows? What's the probability that we pick a Merriman pupil who is an ed puzzler? So again, we're picking out of all 13 pupils, and a Merriman pupil who is an ed puzzler, well, that's 2. As it so happens, the same as probability of picking somebody who's not an ed puzzler from Merriman. Okay, now let's look at these last 2 questions, and then that's it. Just trying to keep these within these ed puzzles, going through them. I really thoroughly enjoyed reading your engagement with the first ed puzzle on this section and seeing theoretical, experimental, and what you thought probability was. Sorry, not sorry. Thank you. well done, I should say. Not sorry or thank you. Well done. Your engagement is beautiful. Okay. So what's the probability? Let's go blue for the best heart, for Espen. So what's the probability? Now notice, different question. This isn't a pupil picked at random. That an Espen pupil is not an Ed puzzler. Okay, so this one's a bit tricky in that we're not saying I'm picking from randomly. We're saying it's given that we're dealing with Espen pupils. So we're just looking down this column. We're just working with Espen pupils. Everyone else shifts aside. And just looking at Espen pupils, what's the probability of picking an Espen pupil who is not an Ed puzzler? Well, of the Espen pupils, only one pupil's not an Ed puzzler, so therefore it's 1 out of 6. There are only 6 Espenites, and 1 is not an Ed puzzler. So that's that part. Okay, let's go for crew if you've been feeling left out. So what's the probability of picking out an Ed puzzler who is a crew pupil? So let's see how this is slightly different to the last question. So we're looking at Ed puzzlers as our starting point. So we're saying we're working with Ed puzzlers. And of the Ed puzzlers, so only Ed puzzlers, non-Ed puzzlers are aside. What's the probability of picking an Ed puzzler who is a crew pupil? So now we're looking at, of the 9 Ed puzzlers, it's given that it's an Ed puzzler, what's the probability that that is a crew person? Well, that's 1. So just of the Ed puzzlers, what's the probability of picking out a crew pupil? 1 out of 9. Okay, so that's kind of the nuance, or just the extra little bit of thinking that's needed of which group are we working in. So that's that. Enjoy the rest of your day. I know you're probably quite sad because you think that's the end, but sorry. It's okay. It's okay.